The strategy of the real. The impossibility of rediscovering an absolute level of the real is of the same order as the impossibility of staging illusion that is no longer possible because the real is no longer possible. It is the whole political problem of parity, of hyper-simulation or offensive simulation that is posed here. For example, it would be interesting to see whether the representative apparatus would not react more violently to a simulated holdup than to a real holdup, because the latter does nothing but disturb the order of things, the right to property, whereas the former attacks the reality principle itself. Transgression and violence are less serious because they only contest the distribution of the real. Simulation is indefinitely more dangerous because it always leaves open to supposition that above and beyond its object, law and order themselves might be nothing but simulation. But the difficulty is proportional to the danger. How to feign a violation and put it to the test? Simulate a robbery in a large store. How to persuade security that it is a simulated robbery? There is no objective difference. The gestures, the signs are the same as for a real robbery. The signs do not lean to one side or another. To establish order, they are always the order of the real. Organize a fake holdup. Verify that your weapons are harmless, and take the most trustworthy hostage so that no human life will be endangered, or one lapses into the criminal. Demand a ransom. Not making as much emotion as possible. In short, remain close to the truth in order to test the reaction of the apparatus to a perfect simulacrum. You won't be able to do it. The network of artificial signs will become intrinsically mixed up with real elements. A policeman will really fire on sight. A client of the bank will faint and die of a heart attack. One will actually pay you the phony ransom. In short, you will be immediately find yourself once again, without wishing it, in the real. One of those functions is precisely to devour any attempt at simulation, to reduce everything to the real, that is, to establish order itself, well, before institutions and justice come into play. It is necessary to see this impossibility of isolating the process of simulation, the weight of an order that cannot see and conceive of anything but the real, because it cannot function anywhere else. The simulation of an offense, if it is established as such, will either be punished less severely because it has no consequences, or punished as an offense against the judicial system, for example, if one set in motion a police operation for nothing, but never as simulation, since it is precisely as such. No equivalence with the real is possible, and hence no repression either. The challenge of simulation is never admitted by power. How can the simulation of breach be punished? However, as such, it is as serious as a simulation of crime. Parity renders submission and transgression equivalent, and that the most serious crime, because it cancels out the difference on which the law is based, is established order can do nothing against it, because the law is a simulacrum of the second order, whereas simulation is of the third order, beyond true and false, beyond equivalencies, beyond rational distinctions upon which the whole of the social and power depend, thus lacking the real. It is there that we must aim at order, and is certainly why order opts for the real. When in doubt, it always prefers this hypothesis, as in the army one prefers to take the simulator for a real madman. But this becomes more and more difficult, because it is practically impossible to isolate the process of simulation through the force of inertia of the real that surrounds us. The opposite is also true, and this reversibility itself is part of the apparatus of simulation and the impotence of power. Namely, it is now impossible to isolate the process of the real or prove the real. This is how all the holdups, airplane hijacks, etc. are now in some sense simulation holdups, in that they were already inscribed in the decoding and orchestration rituals of the media, anticipated in their presentation and their possible consequences. In short, where they function as a group of signs dedicated exclusively to the recurrence as signs and no longer at all to their real end, but this does not make them harmless. On the contrary, as it is as hyperreal events, no longer with a specific content or end, but indefinitely refracting by each other, just like the so-called historical events, strikes, demonstrations, crises, etc. It is in this sense that they cannot be controlled by an order that can only exert itself on the real and the rational, on causes and ends, a referential order that can only reign over the referential, a determined power that can only reign over a determined world, but that cannot do anything against this indefinite reoccurrence of simulation, against this nebula whose weight no longer obeys the laws of gravitation of the real. Power itself ends by being dismantled in this space and becoming a simulation of power, disconnected from its ends and its objectives, and dedicated to the effects of power and mass simulation. The only weapon of power, its only strategy against this defection, is to re-inject the real and the referential everywhere, to persuade us of the reality of the social, of the gravity of the economy, and the finalities of production. To this end it prefers the discourse of crisis, but also, why not, that of desire. Take your power, since in a non-referential world, even the confusion of the reality principle and the principle of desire is less dangerous than contagious hyperreality. One remains among principles, and among those power is always in the right. Hyperreality and simulation are deterrents of every principle and every objective. They turned against power the deterrent that it's used so well for such a long time, because in the end, throughout its history, it was capital that first fed on the destruction of every referential, every human objective, that shattered every ideal distinction between true and false, good and evil, in order to establish the radical law of equivalence and exchange, the iron law of its power. Capital was the first to play at deterrence, abstraction, disconnect, detorialization, etc. And if it is the one that fostered reality, the reality principle, it was also the first to liquidate it by exterminating all use value, all real equivalence of production and wealth. In the very sense we have the unreality of the stakes and the impotence of manipulation. Well, today it is the same logic, and is even more against capital, and as soon as it wishes to combat this disastrous spiral by secreting a last glimmer of reality on which to establish a last glimmer of power, it does nothing but multiply the signs and accelerate the play of simulation.